You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. Seattle's new city attorney, Erika Evans, is here. She's been on the job for a little over 3 weeks, almost 4. One of several newly elected officials moving the city in a more progressive direction. We're going to talk about a range of things from drug laws and diversion to federal immigration enforcement in the city. First, a quick reminder for folks about the city attorney's duties. They enforce Seattle laws, prosecute misdemeanor crimes, and defend the city in court. And here with me now is City Attorney Erika Evans. Thank you so much for being here. And I wonder, does it feel like 3 or 4 weeks, or is it like dog years where it just like it feels way longer?
It feels like it's been a long 3 weeks for sure. But I'm surprised that we're already at the end of this month. It's been going by fast and slow at the same time.
So I want to start with Minneapolis because it's on top of a lot of people's mind here. Around the country, people have been reacting to the killing of 2 U.S. citizens in a month during Operation Metro Surge. Alex Preddy and Renee Macklin Good. Minnesota and the Twin Cities are suing the Trump administration to try to stop the deployment of immigration agents there. Last week, you signed an amicus brief on behalf of Seattle to support that lawsuit. Dozens of local governments have joined that effort. Can you talk to me about why you wanted to be part of that? What was the intention behind that?
I think a few things come to mind immediately. First, it's making clear that what happens in Minneapolis, what happens in Minnesota, has national consequences. And it's shocking to all of us around the country what has been happening there. It's unacceptable. And joining in support with Minneapolis, with Minnesota, and other elected officials across the country, we're making it clear that we're stronger when we're together and that this is something that affects all of us.
There has been some activity in Seattle by agencies like Immigration and Customs Enforcement. 3 people were reportedly arrested by ICE earlier this month on Aurora Avenue in North Seattle. This is not in Seattle, but just on Sunday, a man was arrested by ICE on Aurora in Shoreline across from the Brown Bear car wash while he was driving his small child to daycare. Mayor Wilson said on social media that she was furious about the arrests by the Washelli Cemetery and that, quote, it's unacceptable to kidnap people who are simply going about their lives. According to the Seattle Times, the mayor says she's working with you and Police Chief Sean Barnes to, in her words, keep the people of Seattle safe. So how are you preparing for a potential surge in Seattle, like what we're seeing in the Twin Cities?
Absolutely. And we are working in lockstep with the mayor and our police department, our county, and other local leaders. I think the biggest things, Libby, we have active litigation right now. We have injunctive relief right now against the Trump administration and some of its unlawful actions. And so, we've heard of the threats coming for sanctuary cities in February. We have already joined a lawsuit with San Francisco on that. And so if there is something that is coming in to threaten our funding here in Seattle, we'll file for contempt of court against the Trump administration. So it's really a collaborative approach with other jurisdictions, with our mayor, with our police department, of us all working together collaboratively to fight back against what we're seeing.
What do you make of this effort by progressive prosecutors like Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, who are trying to put together a coalition who say we're going to prosecute federal agents if they violate local laws? Krasner announced this coalition of 9 cities and counties yesterday, and it has a saucy acronym. I'm just going to say it's called the Project for the Fight Against Federal Overreach, or FAFO, F-A-F-O. For folks who are familiar with online, lingo, that it has another meaning behind it, the acronym. King County doesn't appear to be part of this specific group, at least not yet, but prosecutor Lisa Mannion said in a statement this week quote, if someone commits a crime and a case can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, they should expect to see a courtroom. Our laws apply whether you are a civilian or if you are part of local, state, or federal law enforcement, and ICE agents are no exception. So charging an ICE officer for breaking a local law, is that something that would be within your legal authority? Is that mostly something that the King County prosecutor would be dealing with? What is your opinion of this kind of effort?
Yeah, short answer, it depends on what law is being broken. Our office deals with misdemeanors, and so if there's something that's happening within city limits that's a misdemeanor, the answer is potentially. You mentioned Larry Krasner and some of the other efforts of progressive prosecutors. I think we have really good energy right now. What is happening at a federal level, we have a Department of Justice that is not doing investigations and holding some of these federal agents that are committing clear violations and clearly unlawful acts and killings. Not doing an investigation on that is extremely problematic. I came, Libby, from the Department of Justice before this role, and I was one of the two civil rights prosecutors in our office. And so it's the Department of Justice as a body, the civil rights unit, that traditionally does the investigations when federal agents act in an unconstitutional way that violates someone's rights or kills someone. And we know right now that that's not currently happening in this administration. And so we are left as local leaders. How do we keep our community safe? How do we protect our city when we're seeing clearly unlawful acts happening from a federal administration that is harming our communities, killing people in our communities? And there's two things in answering that question of like, can we as local officials prosecute ICE, and or what? How can we hold what's happening by these federal agents? How can we hold them accountable? One thing I want to also lead with is that while they might have an administration right now that is not holding them accountable, this administration will change. And when you kill someone as a federal agent unlawfully, there is no statute of limitations. And I believe we will have a Department of Justice again one day that will uphold the rule of law and will hold these officers accountable. The second thing you asked what we can do locally, it's definitely uncharted waters of local prosecutors prosecuting federal agents. There is a need, though, to really think outside of the box in times like this to keep our community safe. And that is something I'm 1,000% committed to doing, to making sure we're protecting Seattle and our people.
So I'm going to move on just because, we have this issue of drug policy, drug enforcement in the city that kind of became a storyline when you were first taking office. And I know this is getting to be a little bit old news, but I'd love to hear just directly from you, for the basics of what went down here. So on January 1st, you announced a change in how public drug use and possession cases would be handled by your office. You said that you were going to look at those criminal cases sent over by police to review whether any of them should be sent to diversion programs instead of going through courts. So the previous city attorney basically left that with mostly the police and others to divert drug cases away from the criminal legal system. So can you walk us through why have you decided to start reviewing those cases and make diversion decisions? What's the thought process there?
Thank you. Because that is what the law instructs us to do. We are a misdemeanor criminal office, and the law on these drug use cases, folks dealing with substance use disorder, says that prosecutors should be looking and making the proper referrals to diversion. And so essentially what the shift and the change is is actually following what the law has been saying we should be doing. I also want to caveat with what's currently been happening prior to our administration hasn't been working. We can go to different areas in our city and see folks outside, folks using, folks suffering. The current approach has not been working. And what we are saying is we are going to bring, the fresh energy and perspective, the perspective that I bring as someone that has been working in public safety for nearly a decade at all levels up to the federal level, someone that has actively gone after high level traffickers and gotten close to 1 million fentanyl pills off of our streets here in Seattle and firearms, bringing that perspective to really be solutions oriented to accomplish the goal that we all collectively have at the end of the day, to make sure our streets feel safe, people can feel like they're able to thrive and walk safely, and people get the services and treatments that they need. So they're not just getting cycled in jail one day and right back out on our streets the very next day. That costs us money as taxpayers, and it's not actually helping the folks that need services and treatment for addiction. Fentanyl is an extremely addictive drug, 50 times stronger than heroin, something that our country has not seen before. And we need to be very smart in our approach and good stewards of our public dollar and of public safety. I will also say, there was a report that the Seattle Times reported on, along with data from the Department of Public Defense, that talked about what has been happening in the previous administration over 3 years. About 215 people were prosecuted in this office, and how 90 to 97% of people did not get connected to any treatment, which means these people are right back out in community on the streets without services, still dealing with addiction. And that's a failure. And that is something that is really expensive to say is a model that we know doesn't work to continue doing. And so all we're saying now is nothing's changing with officers are still able to use their discretion to make arrests for folks using in public. We are just saying, which is consistent with how the law is written on it, that we're going to make sure we first try to get folks connected with diversion, treatment, and services. But at the same time, we retain the right to prosecute folks if they're not making any meaningful progress.
Mike Solon, the outgoing president of Seattle's Police Officers Guild, the union that represents the uniformed officers, he really blasted this policy memo. He called it a naive, ignorant political decision, and claimed that LEAD, the diversion program that the city uses, is a waste of time. There was a more measured response, but I think still criticism from former SPD Chief Sue Rahr, who spoke to my colleague Amy Radel, who said basically that uniformed police officers don't always trust that diversion programs are going to do enough to interrupt the cycle of addiction. Rahr was basically saying that she believes, and that many police officers believe, that jail is that moment that is needed to, get people into treatment. Like there needs to be a stabilizing effect there, and that provides that moment for people to turn their life around. And so I think what's occurred here is maybe there's a tension that has developed where if police officers feel like they're arresting and recommending sending it to your office for criminal charges, and your office decides to divert, that there will be this separation between officers and the city attorney's office. And I wonder if you could reflect on that. Like, what happens if the trust is broken, I guess, between officers and your office?
And thank you for that. And we're working very closely with Chief Barnes. He's someone that's been on our transition team, and we're working really closely together with that. And what I want to say is to what you just said, if that were to be true, then out of the 215 folks that have been prosecuted by this office in the previous administration, there wouldn't have only been just 6 of them that got connected to treatment. Those are the hard numbers. 215 folks have been prosecuted 6 of them got connected with treatment. And these are folks that were prosecuted if they went to jail or whatnot. That's 97% of folks not getting connected to treatment. We know that jail is not a treatment facility. I, as a former federal prosecutor, have prosecuted people that have smuggled fentanyl into our jails. That's not the place that people are able to get connected with, the serious services and treatments that they need to not, just get out after a day and be right back out in our streets. And so I think the biggest thing is really using the tools at our disposal, making sure we are being good partners, and making sure that we're providing the right response to really stop this cycle. Another big thing is right now, 80% of the time, officers are diverting cases into lead. And that is something that is currently been happening. We're just saying for the other 20%, and what we've heard and learned is that some of this 20%, it's not anything really unique about the case. Sometimes it's just from it being a new officer that doesn't realize that they're supposed to make the first connection with that individual to lead, that we're then getting these cases coming in. Our policy really is something that also is going to build trust with officers, within the policy itself. If there is ever a decision that an officer makes that we go a different way, our office is going to be in coordination and in communication with SPD. And that is something that is written into our policy, and something that we're working in partnership with them. And we're really excited about the opportunity to really provide evidence-based solutions to a problem that we know hasn't currently been working with the previous approach, because the evidence is really clearly in our streets of how it's been previously working.
We got some messages from our listeners when we asked for questions about, just generally the city attorney's role, but a lot of folks responding to this drug policy issue. One of them, probably well known to most people in the city, is Andrea Suarez from We Heart Seattle, who texted in basically saying, does a lenient prosecuting attorney attract people knowing you are going to be softer on crime? That's a quote from Andrea. What's your response to that idea that there is going to be, the message is going to go out that Seattle's soft and, you can come here and do misdeeds, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it's what I've said. We reserve the right to use prosecution if someone's not making meaningful progress. I think also, maybe she doesn't realize my background as someone that has worked in public safety at all levels as a federal prosecutor, going toe to toe with really serious, high level traffickers. And so I think it's just a misconception and misinformation, perhaps.
I got a couple other messages on this issue. One was asking about specifically the International District, which has been such a really big, just intractable problem, seemingly. The open drug market, especially in Little Saigon, on 12th and Jackson. This question is, I'm going to quote it here. What is the city attorney's plan to support the residents of the International District, especially if she's not going to be utilizing soap and soda laws? So that's the stay out of area of drug areas and stay out of areas of prostitution laws. This person says, when I drive through the ID, about half the time I see patrol cars and then there's no drug market. But when there are no patrol cars, I always see the drug market. What's your response? What's the plan for the International District, and how is the city attorney's office working with SPD on that?
Yeah, and I'll start by saying it's really devastating to see over the years what's been happening in Little Saigon. And that is unacceptable, what's happening. And we've been meeting. We've had folks from Friends of Little Saigon on our transition team as well. We are definitely in collaboration and in partnership to improve what's currently not been working. We need more officers. We need to make sure we are not, moving problems around to different neighborhoods of our city. And as the elected city attorney, we won with over 66, close to 67%, but I represent the entire city. So even folks that didn't vote for us, we're going to be responsible to making sure we are delivering for everyone and keeping everyone safe and not ever neglecting certain neighborhoods. That is a priority that I have, that this administration is bringing, to make sure every neighborhood, gets treated with the same dignity, respect, care, and safety that every street deserves. And so it's something we're actively working in collaboration with our mayor, with our partners in Little Saigon, and with our police department as well.
Another message that we got from our listeners characterized basically the approach of increasing diversion as a catch and release system. And, this person says we can't take our eyes off the ball when it comes to protecting people from predators in our judicial system here. Can you just speak to that idea that relying on diversion ultimately, puts people, repeat offenders, back on the street?
And so I'll answer that with, when we're talking about folks dealing with addiction, the approach just to say they should go to jail and then they'll be right back out without any services and treatment is something we know doesn't work. There are other measures that our office is prioritizing, like when we look at DUI cases, when we look at domestic violence, assault cases. Those are cases that we are moving forward with traditional prosecution. That's not something I see. Everything's case by case, but those are cases that we are using traditional methods, more serious violent cases. People are going to be held accountable. We are going to be prosecuting those cases. When we've been working in these last 3 weeks really hard on fixing some of the issues that have been in delays on those types of cases in this office. It's something that I've heard in community as well, of folks, waiting months, if not, almost close to a year for an assault case or a domestic violence case in this office. We need to change that, because that's not keeping our community safe when we are not prioritizing, violent cases in this office. And it's something that this administration is going to be making sure is prioritized and at the top of our minds.
Yeah, my final question is on that note. We talked a lot during the campaign when you were running for office about this backlog of cases, specifically DV cases, domestic violence. You have also testified in support of a bill that would speed up the testing of toxicology reports in DUI cases. So what is the update on getting through that backlog and charging those cases more quickly? What can you tell us about progress?
Absolutely. I'm committed to delivering on what I've said in our campaign, that we want to speed up how long it takes to file domestic violence cases and DUI cases. We've gone to Olympia, I think 3 or 4 times in these last few weeks to testify on Senate Bill 5880, which is something that will allow us to use private accredited toxicology labs to speed up the time it takes to get the toxicology report back for DUI cases. Just to give you some facts, right now, it takes 22 months. If someone is charged with a drug and alcohol related DUI, it's going to take 22 months for our state toxicology lab to give us that toxicology report. That means someone doesn't have conditions imposed to them by the court, no driving restrictions for 22 months. So if someone today, Libby, gets in an accident and is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, my office would not be able to file charges until Thanksgiving 2027. And that's unacceptable. That's not public safety. And so this bill is going to allow us to really speed those times up much, much sooner. And it's something that's not novel. Other states around the country have this allowance, and it's something that it's going to save lives because, we had in 2024 about 148 traffic related deaths from people driving under the influence. That means that every 2.5 days, someone is killed from a traffic related DUI incident. And I'm committed to making sure here in Seattle, we're holding people accountable that commit DUIs and that they're held accountable quickly because that is going to be something that's going to save lives.
I know you got to go. It's a busy first month for you on the job. Really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. City Attorney Erika Evans, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org or on your favorite podcast app.